When it comes to being masculine dominant, right? There's a few things you need to keep in mind. Are you a confirmed bachelor, right? Are you sowing your oats, or are you someone who is into transitional dating, right? Because typically a masculine dominant is going to be in one of those three categories, right? Either someone who is a confirmed bachelor, bachelorette. You could be a man, and keep in mind that sowing your oats as far as only engaging in casual sex for a woman that can be masculine dominant is either a masculine submissive exercise in self-control or a masculine dominant exercise in self-control. But a masculine dominant woman isn't typically going to be the woman who's engaging in casual sex. Or at least that's not the majority of her lifestyle. Because a masculine dominant woman can engage in a masculine submissive exercise in self-control, utilizing what I call the mana principle. Because something to understand is this, right? When you spend a lot of time in a masculine dominant position and you vet primarily for receptiveness, for obedience, for desire, not everyone who's receptive to you and obedient to you is going to be someone who is doing that from a place of desire. Sometimes that may be someone who's doing it from a place of limerence or from a place of insecurity, not really embracing who you are or wanting to move forward with you, right? Or someone who feels as if you're more so a distraction from the goals that they have in life, right? You have to understand that when you're playing a masculine dominant role, right? So it's typically going to fit into three categories. There's the confirmed bachelors, there's the guys who sow their oats, and then there are the guys who transitionally date. Now, what are the difference? Confirmed bachelor, that's a guy who your goal and plan is to never get married, to never have a super serious relationship. Either you don't want to have children or you're done having children, and you're not looking to be a certain level of socially, emotionally, and or financially connected to and or invested in a woman. That's the confirmed bachelor. Their advice is going to be different than the advice you probably should be taking. And also, something else I will include in the confirmed bachelor. This is a caveat. If a man already has a wife, right, or he already has a long-term woman, right, a primary partner who he is integrated with, or is just using the outsourcing game, then he may also be a masculine dominant who will give you advice based off of the perspective he has with his secondary women or his tertiary women, with his rotation, but not necessarily give advice about how to acquire a situation with a woman that you're willing to be integrated with, nor how to maintain or sustain that. So it's mostly just about vetting women and for fuck buddies, but not really having a program that leads forward within that. Like, unless you made a conscious decision or were integrated in including the prospect of something long-term into your program when you met the woman, then some of those instances may be that really forming their non-sexual connection first may actually be something that's more beneficial for you, or that's what worked for you, right? That's a real thing to understand. And typically for a man, that's going to be either a masculine dominant or a masculine submissive exercise of self-control. And in rare instances, it may be a man who is feminine submissive with his primary woman, and then he's being masculine dominant with the women outside of that, right? So if a man already has a primary partner and he's not looking or even open to the idea of some form of integration within his casual fuck buddies, then that may also be a man who doesn't give you a full perspective about how to deal with the game. That's going to be accurate to you, because most men desire marriage. Most men desire a woman to love and to be loved by, right? Understand that. Most men are not going to be the men who are just talking about wanting to get nothing but pussy forever. It's either a young dude or a hurt dude, typically. or that's just the guy's lifestyle. But whichever that reason is, it doesn't really matter. If that's not the lifestyle you want to live in perpetuity, then you also have to understand that if you repress your emotions, if you repress your desire to emotionally connect, then you may find yourself in a position where you are connecting without your permission because your program, your vetting process, didn't include what was necessary for integration, for transitioning within your dating. So you just kind of grow attached to an individual because of traits that they had before you met them, not because of what you taught or because of what they had to show you. And in those type of situations, you can find yourself attached to an individual who may not even be feeling you like that. Like, think about Boomerang, right? Think about Boomerang with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, yes, he was more so on the feminine dominant side, but he also would do masculine submissive exercises to self-control. I'm sure he would also have moments of masculine dominance, right? So for him, most of the women that he met didn't meet his baseline. So when he met a woman who did, she didn't really have to show him anything about how she felt about him. All she had to do was make it a challenge. And through making it a challenge while having also met his baseline principle of being attractive enough in the areas that he deems as valuable, then by his pre-qualified value of her, he put himself in a submissive position. Got in his feelings. And that's how you succumb to the no-limit soldiers, the women who are doing the masculine submissive exercise and self-control. Those are not masculine dominant women. Those are masculine submissive exercises and self-control, right? If she has a program herself and just wants to start with casual sex to make sure that you're compatible, and she uses that and you actually want to be with her and she wants things to go forward, that's a masculine dominant exercise and self-control. She's vetting you. All right, cool. That's not the worst thing in the world. Right? That's if you are someone who desires integration. But if it's a masculine submissive exercise and self-control, she's just limiting her non-sexual investment and limiting how receptive she is to your non-sexual validation, right? By lowering who she is on an emotional level or by already being emotionally damaged. Or you just don't meet her standard. That's a real thing too. Keep that in mind as well. If she just doesn't see you as relationship material, then that can also happen, the masculine submissive exercise and self-control. But you got to understand the difference between a feminine submissive woman and a woman doing a masculine submissive exercise and self-control. And also understand that not every masculine submissive exercise and self-control is bad. If who you are resonates with her animus enough, even if she's doing a masculine submissive exercise and self-control, which is not a bad position to be in because she's going to be in a little bit more control of her emotions, then when she becomes vulnerable to you, if who you are and what you're trying to do, it resonates with her as far as where she's trying to go in life and what her goals are, then she will align herself with you from a masculine submissive exercise and self-control. But that's a different thing. I ain't gonna get too deep into that right now. Not too deep. But there's guys who sow oats, right? And typically guys who say that they're confirmed bachelors are typically going to be sowing oats type of guys unless they burn out of the game. And burning out of the game can be something that causes someone to become a sowing oats type of guy by proxy, right? And what do I mean by sowing oats? What I mean by that is portraying yourself as a confirmed bachelor while really wanting a woman to prove to you, not based off of your program, but just wanting to feel as if it's a woman you'd want to be with, or convincing yourself you don't feel that way. The thing about masculine dominance is certain levels of it's going to be based on your competence. Think about it like boxing, man. Think about it like boxing. Got to think about it like boxing, right? Think about Roy Jones Jr. Think about Sugar Ray Leonard. There's some GOATs in the game. But your longevity is going to be based off of your fundamentals and how you take care of yourself, right? If you don't take care of yourself, live a reckless lifestyle, a hard, fast lifestyle, or if your fundamentals aren't on point and you're relying on your athleticism, you're overly reliant on your talent, then you can easily find yourself in a position where you may get yourself up to the top of the game for a little while. But what also can occur is that once you get up there, once your reflexes start to go away, or once you try to jump up over your weight class and come back down, right? That you won't be the same. And that your longevity and your exit strategy to the game, the boxing game, is not on point. So you have to understand that. What type of style do you have? Like, if your dominance as a man is more so predicated on your just your dick game, right? And not necessarily your knowledge, your skill set, your leadership abilities, right? Your ring IQ, right? If it's not based on that, then masculine dominance isn't going to be something that really you're going to be sustainable at over decades and decades of time. And that's where you find yourself in a position where you're settling down. Because you realize, man, I can't fuck like I used to. I don't have the patience to do this shit like I used to. You like, man, I don't want to play games. I don't want to teach shit anymore. I ain't got no more space for teaching in me. That woman needs to come ready already. Once you get to that point, then typically you just settle down. Either you find a woman you've been friends with for a long time, or you meet a young girl who you perceive is high value, or as a woman who doesn't have a history of being promiscuous, you know, somebody who's young, or you find somebody who's older who just has stability in their life, maybe more money than you, and you settle down, right? But when you settle down, it's like, are you settling down in a way to where you're integrated with your sexual shadow still? Or are you settling down in a way to where you're repressing your baseline of how attracted you need to be in order to be in a situation where you have stability? That's something that can go wrong for both men and women. And it's just something that takes place when you're in a low space. You feel a little bit better, or you miss that feeling you used to get, you're going to go back to the streets. So one thing I encourage men to do, me personally, is not to waste too much time, right? Not to waste too much time. If you know you're a man who wants to get married, to have a family, you ain't got to jump and do it when you're 22 years old. I ain't saying that shit. But what I am saying is that when you in the game, you can either transition or sow your oats for a short period of time. I think transitioning is better, right? Because one thing you might have heard somebody say before is that a real pimp marries his hoes. You know, and that's something that can be it can rub some people the wrong way to put it that way. But if you're operating on some masculine dominant shit, you got a woman who's really receptive to you. She down for you. She invested in you, right? Then that's typically the woman you're gonna want to integrate with, not a woman who just holds you to this high standard. Because then that makes you more so like a feminine dominant. That makes you more so like a man who is rewarding bad behavior, rewarding a woman who tells you what she wants, rather than her being receptive to what you're trying to do, because you don't have enough of a plan or a program or a strategy or awareness of what it means or why you should integrate in your own mind. So you end up succumbing to a woman who's really in her masculine energy towards you. Right? That's why masculine, submissive, feminine, dominant, they are, you know, on some shit, right? They are connected to each other. Because there's masculine submissive within the feminine dominant within the masculine submissive. The feminine dominant within the masculine submissive is an internal desire to rebel, right? To rebel against the structures that they put on themselves, to release those inhibitions. And another aspect of it is covert contracts and manipulation through codependency, right? That's another thing within the masculine submissive. Another thing is lying to oneself, right? And wanting to play the anima or play the animus of a good girl or a nice guy. it causes the individual to resonate with the feminine dominant who has maladaptive defense mechanisms and strategies to get their way, but they show their love through what they're willing to do to get it. So the masculine submissive typically isn't truly being lied to. They're being lied to, but oftentimes the effort that a person is willing to put into manipulate them makes them feel desire. It's just like having a rape kink, right? Where someone wanted you enough to bypass your boundaries and to take the responsibility, right, for you doing something that goes against your social programming is what makes you feel the most desire. I think that's a real simple and easy way of putting how the masculine submissive oftentimes is going to have rape kinks, rape fetishes, and do things in that particular way, right? And that's a two-edged blade. That's where the plausible deniability comes from. It's like, am I going to get enough validation from you? Especially the masculine submissive woman. It's like, am I going to get enough validation from you before you bring up wanting to have sex to feel like I got enough that I should get out of it? Or if I go ahead and do it, but I like you, then hopefully you're going to reciprocate my emotional needs. Right? Covert contracts. Or I know that this is something that can happen. Low key, it's something I want to happen. But I'm not, either this goes against my morals and my standards of how I would like to perceive myself, although it's really me, or this is something that's going to go against my relationship as far as cheating, or this is something that's going to go against my religion, right? Like if they believe that premarital sex is fornication, I'm not one of those people who believes that, but if they do, yeah. Let's say it's a situation where they feel like it's wrong or they're full of shame, then they typically are going to want somebody who pushes them beyond their boundaries and their limitations to do something that they wouldn't want to verbally necessarily consent to, or follow a narrative of this is something I'm open to from the beginning. It's something they want to get worked up to and warmed up to, right? So something to understand is that you got the sowing oats. So first thing I said was what? Confirmed bachelor. If you burn out of the game because you were overly reliant on talent, or you don't take care of yourself and your talent, then you may settle down because you can't do what you used to. And then you turn masculine submissive. There's a lot of dudes who are players off of their youth, who got into a position where they settled down and just cheated or duplicitous, end up getting divorced, or it's not always because of that, because sometimes there's an understanding where the woman just knows what type of man she's with. But then after they get divorced, niggas just end up tricking and being sugar daddies. Or old unk in the club forever. Right? I done seen it plenty of times. Man, the dudes talk player shit, but a lot of them dudes, they be tricking on women. They really do. They be buying pussy. You know, being sugar daddies and stuff. Or trying to lead with what they can do for a woman. That's why I say take advantage of your youth. Because there's a difference between like being integrated and being settled. Settled down. You know, if you integrate with a woman, then those domestic qualities, those levels of emotional intelligence, that ability to create safety, right? That ability to be invested in her and alleviate burdens from her life through safety and integration, those things become things that also increase her sexual attraction to you, right? But if you don't hit that woman's baseline of how sexually attracted she is to you, or she doesn't feel safe to express what she really thinks, desires, feels, and prefers, that intimacy that comes with safety, if she doesn't feel safe to do that, then by proxy, you become the provision stability guy, right? The gentleman gigolo complex. You become the gentleman by proxy. And that's not a good feeling when you've already been, well, it's not a good feeling either way, right? Unless you're a cuck. Unless you're like on some feminine submissive shit, you're typically not going to like that. If you're integrated, you can be like that too, but That's some different shit. Not everybody integrated is going to get to that level. But then you also have transitional dating, right? And transitional dating is where your program isn't only about trying to have sex with the most amount of women possible or the most attractive woman possible. Your program becomes more so about being able to vet through the women who are receptive to casual sex with you because of the level of attraction that indicates, right? And in that situation, you are essentially an individual who is using your program as a vetting process to eventually find your one, or eventually find your possible future wife or girlfriend or whatever type of relationship you want to have, where you transition, right? And when you transition, it's not a separate process from how you date. So you don't really take favorites. You don't really say, well, this one's just fuck material, this one's dating material. When you get really serious with it and your competency is high enough, you game's on point for real, then you can have a rotation full of women who are possible prospects to take seriously. All right. Now, if you outsource, and you may not do that. That's why I included the man who already has a primary partnership as a caveat to the confirmed bachelor. Because in that situation, you're not looking to have as deep and emotionally profound of a relationship with these other women that you're having casual sex with, but it's still masculine dominant, right? It's just masculine dominant with no forward trajectory, right? But if you're like really poly, or you really want like to be in a polygamous relationship, then you can have a primary partnership and still run your vetting process in a way to where your program is vetting to see if a woman can be more than just a fuck buddy, right? But if you're a man who's serious about wanting something to build a legacy in that particular manner, to want to be socially connected, financially connected, emotionally connected, then if that's what you're looking to do, then you want to limit the amount of pussy just for the sake of pussy that you get. You might start there, but the better your vetting process gets, and the better your program is, the lower your turnover rate is. Gotta look at this shit like a corporation. Gotta look at it like a corporation. What is your turnover rate, right? Because the thing about transitional dating is that some women aren't going to look at you as relationship material if you start with sex. Or if you're honest with them about who you are as a sexual being and how you get down, right? And that's typically going to be the women who are more repressed, or a woman who's doing a masculine submissive exercise in self-control, because she still has the gentleman gigolo complex. So in order to move in this manner, what you have to understand is that your program has to be something that's more than just the rules that she follows to engage with you at all. Your program has to include things that create safety, that create win-win scenarios, right, where she feels she mutually benefits. Your program has to include things that help her with her self-actualization, her growth and improvement, things that make her more attractive to others, you, and herself. And through the elevation of that process, that's how you vet a woman as far as what she does for you, what skills she has, right? That's where you vet the woman for these particular qualities and transition from just fuck buddies into marriage, if that's something you want to do, to the extent of whatever your program is. Yes, there's going to be some women who fuck it up for themselves, and they're going to stay at a lower position, but you got to understand the difference between when the issue is your leadership skills and your program versus the woman, when you hold yourself accountable. So sometimes holding yourself accountable as a masculine dominant means leaving a woman alone. And sometimes holding yourself accountable means that you need to grow. You need to become more integrated yourself, which means that you move into the integrated masculine space. And there's a difference between settling and integration, right? Settling typically is going to be premature integration, right? integration is where the masculine and the feminine are integrated as far as the logical choice and the emotional and or sexual desire are two things they are on the same page. They're in alignment. All right. So if you're masculine dominant and you avoid dealing with women that you know that you wouldn't want to take seriously, what that also helps with is that also helps with avoiding overstimulation, right? Because overstimulation is a real thing. A woman can have a history of abuse that she's endured in her life that makes it so that what she's open to, where her sexual boundaries are in the ocean because of her life experiences. But those same life experiences can be connected to character traits and maladaptive defense mechanisms and ways of resolving conflict and dealing with her trauma that could make that same woman a woman who you wouldn't trust to be your woman. Understand that. And that's where sometimes the masculine submissive exercise and self-control can be that type of woman. All right? And what would that include sometimes? Sometimes that'll include the strippers, right? Sometimes that includes certain women in the sex work industry. Not all, but certain women. That includes the OnlyFans women, right? You know, just because a woman sells pussy doesn't mean she's going to charge you all the time. But just living that particular lifestyle, it does indicate some things. Then it's about what type of lifestyle are you willing to integrate into. If your goal is to be in the sex work industry, then that's not an issue. That's somebody who's on your level, right? That's somebody who you can elevate into their understanding of that aspect of the game. But understand that to the extent that a woman is transactional about her sexuality, you need to have a pimp mentality. To the extent that she has whore qualities and whore tendencies, you need to have a pimp mentality. I ain't talking about being judgmental, right? But I'm talking about you should benefit, right? It's like, I'll put it on the simplest form. Like, let's take it on the lowest level. Let's just talk about an attention whore, right? If you're dealing with a woman who has social media, right, which most of us will, if she's the type of woman who talks about sex online, that should be something that's boosting your appeal to where it makes other women want to fuck with you. Especially if that's a woman who is going to go out and get the other women's for you, right? Or if she talks about sex online, she should be boosting you up. She talks about relationships online. It shouldn't be something that denigrates the social perception of your leadership skills, right? If she is an artist and she makes sexual music, you should be benefiting on some level from this artistry or from these connections that she's building, right? Or you should benefit in some type of way financially from what's going on if you're going to integrate with a woman who has a certain level of out the norm or sexual shadow world type of behavior or tendencies. That's how you know, there's the safety and the intimacy, but then there's also having the wisdom to understand that there's pluses and minuses to everything. And if the pluses and minuses don't weigh out to where you benefit from things that add risk to your relationship or things that add red flags to your relationship that a woman's doing, then that's probably not the wisest decision, right? So you got to understand that. Got to understand that. Now there's a benefit that can come with it, right? Like a woman who's naturally like not monogamy oriented, and keep in mind this, right? This is Brody's Law. Some people always will, some people never will. Most people are somewhere in between. And what this really means and what this really indicates is that if there's the idea of having multiple sexual partners, let's just say that. Let's say cheating, sexual duplicity, multiple sexual partners. Let's just create that as a category to put into Brody's Law. Some people always will, as in that's her nature, that's her character. Some women who always will be women who embrace and accept that lifestyle and integrate it into their values about what they want their relationship to look like, I can respect that. And there's going to be some women who always will, because they're insecure or because they're duplicitous and they haven't integrated that into who they are. Now, sometimes with the women who always will, it's because they're an attention whore who will whore for attention, right? Or who's very prone to limerence. And if she feels somebody new she's excited about, then boom, she just gonna go for it, regardless. And forget about what she already has in front of her. That's one type of woman right there. Right? The extreme monkey branching type of woman. That's the always will. You can't hold yourself accountable for dealing with an always will as far as what she did, right? Because it's not based on your competence. And it's not necessarily based on your security. Understand incompetence versus insecurity. That woman is just based off of who she is. Now, you have to hold yourself accountable for your vetting process to assess if that's the type of woman that she is. And sometimes with those women, when you recognize that, you can kind of pick it up quick. And if you recognize it and you're already fucking with her, then she just may not make it above a certain position with you. So she might have to stop at the fuck buddy level. Right? If you're a polyamorous type of dude, that can work for you. And there's a lot of good women who are who have that mentality or who have that perspective to an extent. As long as it's not some other shit, but it's not always a bad woman. Right? That's just how she built. That's how she set up. But if that's not the type of lifestyle you want to live going into the future, can't anybody shame you into moving forward with her and treating that as if it's acceptable, even if the context is sex. Like, dudes who are confirmed bachelors or dudes who are done having kids or don't want kids or never believe in getting married or are lifetime polyamorous individuals who just don't want children, like, oftentimes those people will give you advice based on a perspective of, like, saying, it's insecure if you're not with a woman because of some of her sexual behaviors. Think about the context. Put those things I just said together. So you want to make sure that you're competent to the level of what your security level can handle. Very important to understand. Which means that your competency has to be able to push a woman forward sexually. For her desire and openness to want to go to a new plane of existence with you sexually versus her past experiences. That makes it easier for you to hear her truth and accept her in her truth, which gives her safety. And it makes it easier for your ego to handle dealing with her and being willing to take it seriously, which is the male ego and sexual performance. There's a connection between these things: intimacy, safety, the male ego, and sexual performance. Very important to understand. You got to know your competency level, and that's what being in the game helps with being masculine dominant. You learn your competency level when you're not offering anything non-sexual to women. When you're not offering anything non-sexual to women, as far as a long-term relationship, right? Up top, off top. When you're not offering anything non-sexual, being emotionally, socially, or financially, you're offering dick and the masculine energy that comes with you. A woman's not going to pull out, the average woman who isn't insecure isn't going to pull out of her non-sexual energy to try and be compassionate towards your needs. Her desire to deal with you is coming from a selfish place of her own desire, but also from her own natural feminine and submissive inclination towards you. On that level is where you know what a woman really feels about you, right? That's where you know what she really feels about you, is without that context. Now, this can be integrated. It can be. But there's difference between premature integration and integration. Right? So when a woman has this position with you, when a woman has this stance with you, that's where your leadership skills really show. That's where your programming, your game really shows. If you're providing enough to a woman non-sexually, for her to be willing to pull out of her non-sexual energy to meet your needs from a place of compassion or pity or transaction, then your program doesn't even have to be as much on point because you're buying her cooperation. And that's why I said insecure women, like extremely insecure codependent women, like they may feel like the small amount of validation you give them based off of not being invested, it raises the value of the validation that they receive in a way that causes them to chase after you because you don't want them. With that type of woman, you can't integrate with her because the moment that you do become emotionally invested, she's going to lose interest. Like I said, there's masculine submissive within the feminine dominant. And there's feminine dominant within the masculine submissive. Right? So the feminine dominant sometimes within the masculine submissive is if the masculine submissive just experiences limerence and experiences a quick short burst of the feminine submissive energy, or then gets into the feminine dominant, right? That she may love bomb you. Codependence love bomb as well, right? Because there's narcissism within codependency and vice versa. Because trying to earn love also comes from a place of entitlement. It also does. So there's a lot of things you got to observe for when you're transitionally dating. And you also have to understand overstimulation, right? Because if you're in a position where your submissive ego gets overstimulated, then your baseline of what you need to be attracted or what you need to feel sexually satisfied, if it's something that you can't teach, then it may create a situation where how you're dealing with a woman is more so like a Madonna whore complex. And that's where you settle, right? Now, if you maintain the dominant position and you're in control, right, then what happens is the pleasure that you experience is limited to what you're in control of. What that means is that if you compartmentalize it or you know how to teach what it is that you like, right? If you know how to teach what it is that you like, then you can integrate that into your standards of your baseline principle, but also of something that you can teach, which goes more so into the concept of being respected for your leadership skills. Then a woman can meet your baseline and it's not a duplicitous thing, depending on what type of relationship you want to have. But if you allow yourself to get overstimulated, then it creates this naturally built-in Madonna whore complex, right? Not on purpose, but it's just that, okay, the more sexually adept women, maybe the women who, the freakier women you wouldn't want to be with are the ones who do it for you. And the other ones just provide stability and security, feeling of safety, right? So these are just important concepts to understand, right? There's 3 types of masculine dominance. What's your turnover rate like? What are the opportunities for advancement like? What is your vetting process like? Your interviewing process? How are these things working for you? If it's not working for you too well, you might need to shift some of your focus to improving your program, to being more integrated within yourself. You might want to shift your focus towards thinking about what your game is like. Is your game on point? But then you also may want to shift your focus towards being in a position where the things that you require to actually transition up, to advance a woman, to integrate, are things that are within your vetting process and your program and your leadership skills. Right? So I think that's important to understand. So there's 3 types of masculine dominance, right? There are the confirmed bachelors, with the caveat of the man who already has a primary partner, if he's not looking to be in a polygamous or poly type of situation. Then you also have the man who sows oats and then settles down, which at times can be a man who views himself as a confirmed bachelor because he's not looking towards his exit strategy from the game, right? And then you have the guys who transitionally date. And the guys who transitionally date have a program to where they're not trying to wait until they're 50 to get married, right? It's something that they want, or whatever type of relationship they want, and they're vetting the women that they deal with to see if they can be in that position. This is Coach Brody. I'm out.